I'd like to call the meeting of the Board of Education to order. Before we begin our business, I would like to take just a moment to, on behalf of the board, express our deep sympathy for the loss of several of our family members over the past several weeks. Riggs Lindsay was a kindergarten child at Belvedere Elementary who passed several weeks ago, followed by Janice Dawkins. She was a teacher's aide in a special needs class at Mossy Creek. And just today we learned that the wife of the custodian at Mossy Creek, Alex Haley White, passed also. We were very, very saddened by this, and we express our concerns and prayers for strength to the families involved and the friends and co-workers. I would like at this point to have a moment of silence in memory of these families. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And ordinarily, you guys can come on in. What we do, just for your information, the way this works is that the chair, the vice chair, and the superintendent meeting formulate the agenda. We post it on a Friday afternoon, and that is the official agenda. It can be modified by a vote of the board. At this point, I will entertain any recommendations, motion from the board to modify the agenda.
Excuse me, that's right. That would be the pledge of allegiance.
I'll do it next. Okay. Anything on the agenda? Well, we'll let it stand as approved. If you would, please stand and let's have the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have one set of minutes requiring approval this evening. Those are the minutes of the last meeting, February 9th meeting. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
Moved by Mr. Salas, seconded by Ms. Shealy. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please raise your hands. That's everyone. Under public participation, we have one person who is asked to address the board, Ms. McCann. If you would, please come forward. You stated your topic as a question. This is the opportunity for members of the public to talk to us. We do not respond in this venue, but
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I am here to talk about transgender issues. I have read the state's recommendations for transgender issues, that you should make transgender people feel comfortable in the classroom, comfortable in restrooms, and comfortable in after-school activities, which was probably sports, etc. And I happened to attend last meeting just to kind of get my feet wet, and I saw the Maslow's pyramid of needs, and the very base of the pyramid, of course, is food, clothing, shelter, and rest. Then the next very important level is safety and security. And I do have some friends who are teachers, and I have spoken to several 9th grade girls, and I talked to them about this issue of the restrooms and who can go in restrooms, etc. And to a person, the 9th grade girl said they don't go to the restroom during the day. Now that's 8 hours. And one gal said, well, because there could be a senior boy in there, I'm not going in there. And I don't think there's a doctor anywhere that would say 8 hours without relieving yourself is a safe, healthy, secure method. So I wonder what we're doing to help everybody feel comfortable. I know what we're doing to help the transgender people feel comfortable, but I wonder what we're doing to help other people feel comfortable. And then the sports issue, I'm old, as is obvious by my hair, and I was in high school 1960 through 64, and there was nothing, I'm from the north, nothing for young women to do, no sports. If you weren't a cheerleader, a majorette, or in the band, you were nothing. And so women were known, young women were known by who they dated. If you dated somebody cool, you were cool. If you dated a nerd, you were a nerd. But women were not known for what they were. They were known for who they dated. And what a wonderful thing when Title IX came along in 1972 and women could be known for their own accomplishments. And I think that's incredible, how fast they could run, how high they could jump, how well they could play baseball, softball, whatever. But women were known for what they could do, not who you dated. And now when we look at what's happening in our sports, transgenders coming into women's sports, everybody here would acknowledge the fact that someone born a man can run faster, jump higher, hit harder than somebody born a woman. And so slowly, transgender men are going to take over spots on women's teams and take over opportunities for young women to have scholarships in college for their athletic ability. And I think this is a shame. It's eroding Title IX and will eventually just demolish Title IX. And I kind of feel that our normal, typical, average, usual people need a voice. And we're not even allowed to say normal anymore because that infers that someone is abnormal or atypical or unusual. And isn't that sad? In fact, there's a term, I've done just very little research, not much, but there's a term for normal or non-transgender, and it's cisnormal. Isn't that sad that we can't say normal, can't say usual, can't say regular, can't say that stuff? And I just feel that the normal, usual, typical, average people need, young women need a voice. And I will close with just reading what the governor of Tennessee says about transgender participation in women's sports. It will ruin the opportunity for girls to earn scholarships. It will put a glass ceiling back over women that hasn't been there in some time. And I think it's a very bad thing for women and women's sports. And I think it's a safety thing for women in the restroom also. So I'm just, thank you for your time and just trying to be a voice for people who are normal.
Thank you for your remarks, Ms. McCann. We next have a presentation from Public Education Partners, Mr. John Langford and Ms. Bush here from Public Education Partners. So if you would.
You guys can stay. Good evening, Dr. Bradley, Superintendent Lawrence, members of the board, members in the audience, and everyone watching online. My name is Mike Rozier, and I have the honor of serving as Communications Director for Aiken County Public Schools. And tonight we're going to recognize a couple of top-flight organizations in our area who are great partners with Aiken County Public Schools. Public Education Partners, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the empowerment of educators and students, and well known in our community simply as PEP, continues to be a strong supporter of our mission as well as the educators in our schools. This terrific organization recently provided 14 Aiken County Public School District educators with grants totaling $6,590. Of that total amount, $3,090 directly related to STEAM grants. The grants were provided by PEP in partnership with Savannah River Nuclear Solutions, the American Association of University Women, Savannah River Remediation, the City of North Augusta, Bridgestone Americas, Aiken Off-Road Tire Plant, and the Women of Woodside. So we're going to congratulate these recipients one at a time here. I'll turn my clicker on here. Jennifer Manofo with Aiken Elementary. Her grant was Growing Readers Through Book Clubs, and that was for $250. Is she here tonight? No, she's not. Okay. Sarah Maney of Mossy Creek Elementary. Her grant was Wrapping Up Math ×2. and that was for $500. Vicki Thompson of Oakwood Windsor Elementary, her grant was Growing Readers Need a Growing Library, and her amount was $510. Leslie Libran of Ridge Spring Minetta Elementary, her grant was Motivating Students to Read at Home, and her grant was $500. Carrie Lucas from Warrenville Elementary, using an iPad to accommodate and promote STEM in the special education hybrid classroom. She got paid by the word there. So $500 on that grant. Victoria Christensen, Kennedy Middle, 21st Century Art Room, hands-on making with a digital twist. And that was for $500. Dr. Kimberly Fontanez, New Ellington Middle Steam Magnet School, spraying art into the 21st century for $740. Amber Glessner, also of New Ellington Middle Steam Magnet School, library take-home activity kits for $500. Agnes Hamilton of New Ellington Middle Steam Magnet School, homes for the homeless, $525. Natalie Moffitt, New Ellington Middle Steam Magnet School, robotics smart machines, $570. John Hostetler of Aiken High School, putt-putt golf course, $495. If I can find out where that golf course is at Aiken High, I will gladly go and help them try that out. Art Lader of Aiken High School, verbally, online language immersion for German students, and that was $500. Lori Johnson, Ridge Spring Minetta High School, how does your garden grow? $500. I feel like Alex Trebek up here for take how does your garden grow for $500 in Ridge Spring. And working with Lori was Joey Middlebrooks of Ridge Spring Minetta High, how does your garden grow for $500. And at this time, I'm happy to introduce PEP's new board chair, Mr. John Lampert, along with PEP Scholarships and Endowment Committee Chair. Well, Mr. Retson's not here with us tonight, so we will proceed. Have Mr. Lawrence come up front. Go ahead, and would you like to say a word? All right, go ahead.
Well, here's the thing, you're so great. You said most of the things that I had written down to say.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're perfectly fine. So, Dr. Bradley, board members, Superintendent Lawrence, we are delighted to serve as the bridge between corporate, what's going on in the community, and public education. It is our honor to be here. It is our honor to serve. I had the opportunity to look over some of these applications, and it is absolutely amazing. You all should be very proud of the educators that we have in front of our students. The ideas that they have to stimulate them and encourage them to learn was absolutely amazing. So they deserve more than what we could give, but we're delighted to give them a start in this arena. So thank you. Okay, here we go. Put my hand in the paper. Oh, how many?
We'll do a different angle.
Thank you so much, Chuck, for everything that you do. We've got a very anxious crew in the back over here that's ready to proceed with our next presentation. They're very excited to be here. We're also excited to have them. Many people look forward to giving back to their community, but sometimes they question how can they be most effective at doing so, especially during a time when finances are tight for so many people. SRP Federal Credit Union has made that desire an affordable possibility for more than 8,500 people through the High School Affinity Debit Card Program. The program, launched in the summer of 2018, has yielded tremendous dividends. See what we did there? Dividends, right? For Aiken County Public High Schools. simply by requesting a high school affinity debit card, which we have them shown here, representing any of our 8 high schools or the Aiken County Career and Technology Center, and making purchases of everyday necessities. SRP will in turn donate to the cardholder's selected school. These funds allow high schools to purchase needed books and materials, equipment, or fund school activities, which enhance the educational experience of our high school students. SRP Federal Credit Union has also supported Aiken County Public Schools by promoting financial literacy. And as this is Public Schools Week, I'm especially excited to introduce SRP Federal Credit Union Interim President, Mr. Woody Schuler, and SRP Board Member Melinda Brinkley, who are here to reveal the amount of the affinity card donation from the fourth quarter transactions of 2020 and present Mr. Lawrence with a big check. So keep in mind, this amount is just from 1 quarter of transactions that we've taken here. So if you guys would,
4 quarters. 4 quarters.
it's 4 quarters, okay, 4 quarters. I was about to quadruple this thing, wasn't I?
We'll get there.
Yes, sir. So if somebody could tell me what the amount, I don't even know what the amount is. What is it? $138,800.05. And we'll get Superintendent Lawrence. If y'all want to scoot over to the right a little bit, that way we don't want you to have to get the podium in your shots. I know y'all got some media folks here with you guys as well. Thank y'all for bringing such a nice sized crew tonight. Plenty of support. All right.
I feel like Vanna White.
There you go. Between Vanna White and Alex Trebek, we've got 6 to 7 o'clock covered up here, don't we? Or 7 to 8 on Channel 12, is that what it was? A little plug for this. Thank you so very much to PEP for coming tonight, and also to SRP Federal Credit Union. Thank you so much for being such terrific and outstanding partners with us and supporting our educators as they work to better the lives of our students. We really appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you so very much for being here. Thank y'all so much.
On behalf of the Board of Education, I'd also like to express our gratitude for your being here and for bringing us such a pleasing present. We really thank you for that, and we will try to put it to really good use. Thank you. Come back anytime. Next item is an informational item. We have an assessment presentation by Ms. Owen. Did you want to introduce it, Ken, or to go straight to her?
Yeah, we want to invite Ms. Olin up to offer this presentation. And she has put together quite a lot of information for the board. In addition to what you're going to see and what you're going to hear from her, she's given you some information to take with you so that you can become, I don't know that you'll ever be the experts that Kate is on assessment, but this will get you started. So, Kate, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Superintendent Lawrence, board members, my colleagues, and guests. Regarding those binders, I have to thank my team who worked really hard on collating them all and putting them all together for you. And this isn't necessarily, the binder's not meant to follow along, but to provide you with more in-depth resources. It includes information such as the summary of each assessment, parent letters that may be sent either before to families before major assessment, a letter that may accompany test results, and a sample of an individual student score report so that you can see that assessment a little bit more. But I just want to start with a little kind of review. Remember, we strive for a comprehensive, balanced assessment, so we're checking for understanding now. We've covered some of this before. I feel like I'm back in the classroom. We have formative measures, formative teachers, ooh, that's, get some echo there. Teachers administer formative assessments all day long. It could be something simple as a thumbs up, thumbs down, I understand, I don't understand, quick exit survey, pulse check, muddiest point, or just, any other quick checks for understanding. Formative assessments inform instruction, allows us to adapt and move quickly to identify strengths and weaknesses and fill in gaps. Interim assessments, our closest interim that we have is our benchmarks, also formative in nature. And then we have summative assessments, end-of-year tests, often referred to as autopsy data, which I will argue all day long, because we use summative assessments. We take that information. As a matter of fact, I had Dee Dee Scott and I spent a good portion of our weekend talking about their summative results at their school and how that goes into a feedback loop. We look at that, we look at weaknesses and strand areas. We know, look at this as our lowest area, algebraic thinking and operations. What can we do to improve that? So we look at it not only at a student level, but at a school level and a district level. And most of these assessments, almost every assessment, we do that with. So I'm not going to get too much into depth about that. But comprehensive, balance of information for teachers, parents, you as the board, and accountability for the state. Our infographic, just so you understand where we're going, our goal is to have our students graduate college and career ready. We discussed at the last presentation what that means. Mastery of state standards, having a college or career readiness indicator, reading at a 1300 Lexile, striving for a minimum 1300 Lexile, engaging in numeracy at a 1350 quantile. Then just a little bit of academic vocabulary, and some of you are more familiar with measurement than others, but we have two types of, when the data comes back, a student, when they're taking an assessment, doesn't know if it's a criteria referenced or a norm referenced test. It's the results that come back. So if it's a criterion referenced assessment, it's measuring that student against a set standard. We don't compare them in a criterion reference to other students. In a norm reference test, they are compared to other students. And we get the data back that might give us a state percentile ranking, a national percentile ranking. And so that is just a little bit of a difference on the two different types of tests. Sometimes you'll have one that's criteria referenced and provide norms. And so we'll talk about those a little bit. So this kind of follows a little trajectory, we'll start with the elementary kids. Our first assessment that we have, and I've tried to follow the outline that Dr. Bradley provided for us here, kind of specifically, but just to give you the purpose of the test. The kindergarten readiness test measures readiness for kindergarten in 4 domains. It is not, its only purpose is to show if students, when they enter Aiken County Public Schools, are ready for kindergarten. It is a state-required assessment that all publicly funded schools will administer this assessment. It's administered in the first 45 days of the school year, and we try to do it, on the front end. But the data is useful to us. It allows us to see kind of by area where kids where they're struggling. Teachers observe. A large portion of the assessment is observational. A student may not even know about 17 of those items. It's a 50-item assessment that they're even in an assessment. The teacher's watching them. Large motor skills, small motor skills. Can the student use the scissors? Can they hold a pencil? So they're just kind of checking those things off. And then a smaller portion of the assessment can be done in a small group assessment, but that is done, it's developed by Johns Hopkins University. It takes approximately 30 to 40 minutes to administer the assessment, and that's pretty much does not include the observational items that a teacher may be checking off on their list. But we use that information, we summarize it, We see how we compare, and we shared some of those results at our last time we discussed assessment. The next assessment that is done early on is Fondness and Pinnell, often called F&P, and that is one-on-one reading. A teacher is required to sit down and listen to a child read. We often say there's no substitute for listening to a child read, but it's done on a rubric. So if a teacher's listening for miscues, and they're marking notes as the student is reading along in a series of texts. This was developed. It's well-known assessment. Takes about 30 minutes per student. That means that a teacher, on the whole, is doing that one-on-one with each student. Not that it takes entire 30 minutes for the whole class. It's done. Had previously been administered 3 times a year in grades K through 3. Last year we did a survey of all teachers to get feedback, and we had of K through 2 teachers, like 92% indicated that yes, they use that data to inform instruction. But one of the questions was asked who should utilize that, and about 1/3 of those teachers felt it was most important for struggling readers. So what we did is remove the requirement to administer to everyone, and that we identify those in the lowest quintile, the lowest 20% of readers in grades K through 3 are required to do Fondness and Pinnell for their students. FastBridge, we discussed that last time. That's new to us this year. Required as of Act 213 that we have some type of a screener in our school district to identify students at risk for dyslexia. This screener, we had a large committee and spent a couple months last year examining options, and the district selected FastBridge. We're very happy with the data, very actionable data. Students take it 3 times a year. Takes about 30 minutes to administer all the probes, actually less, that's kind of on the high side. And results here, we get norms and benchmarks. We can see those students who are at risk, no risk or some risk for reading difficulty. And then we also get, not only we get a school norm, we get a district norm, which is really nice. It's the first assessment that we have that is providing us school and district norms in addition to national norms. The cognitive abilities and Iowa test is also required by state law, that we administer a assessment that will identify students who are gifted and talented. That is primarily what that assessment is for, although we do use the results and examine those because it also gives us a great data point on where all our second graders are at, where their deficiencies are. The COGAT itself is an aptitude test. However, the Iowa is true, academic based for measures areas that students should be learning in school. So we do use that data. That is a longer test. It is administered over 5 days, and average time is about 217 minutes over that 5-day period. And at the end, towards the end of the presentation, we're going to talk about time on testing as a whole. So I just wanted you to know that. This is done once per year, and it's required by State Board of Education regulation. At the bottom of each, it also talks about the teacher's commitment. And I want you to point out that is in the slides and on your handouts. What is it that a teacher has to do? Almost the majority of our assessments, teachers do participate in some type of training. They have to be trained often and sometimes certified, take a quiz or an assessment that shows that they can administer that assessment with fidelity. And state assessments require an hour of training, etc. The FastBridge required a full day of training for all teachers this year that took the training, and administrators trained as well. The next is reading inventory, as we talked about last time. This measures lexile. It's a comprehension, reading test of reading comprehension. It is administered over the computer-based test. It is computer adaptive. Students are presented with more difficult measures as they go along. Takes on average 25 minutes for a student to complete that test. Provides us criteria and norms. We can see national norms, but we also see if a student is meeting, not meeting, approaching standards. Teachers administer this. They walk their students to the lab or help them get out their laptops and ensure that they log in to complete the computer-based test. Math inventory is very similar. Both are by HMH, Houghton Mifflin. The math inventory takes longer, on average 45 minutes for each assessment. Provides the same norms, criterion and national norms. It's administered 3 times a year as well, fall, winter, spring. Computer-based. Both of these, reading inventory and math inventory, were district-adopted assessments. And I believe it was in 2015 that they were adopted. It was the year before I came here, and so that's math inventory. Generates a quantile. Reading inventory generates the lexile. The performance task assessment is a targeted assessment. Not all of the assessments in here, and I'll try to point them out, are taken by every single student. The performance task is the first one here that we've taken. This is targeted students in 2nd through 5th grades. The performance task assessment allows, under South Carolina state law, in order to be identified as gifted and talented, a student has to qualify out of 2 out of 3 domains. And so we give students plenty of opportunities to test to be gifted and talented. It's not a one-off thing that happens in 2nd grade. If you don't qualify in 2nd grade, you're out. So the performance task assessment allows those that have met one dimension and need a second. We administer the performance task assessment. It's a manipulative spaced assessment that allows them another opportunity to meet the 2nd criteria to be state identified as gifted and talented. This was a state developed assessment many years ago in conjunction with the College of William and Mary, which are well recognized as leaders in gifted and talented programming. That takes 4 hours over a 2-day period. Teacher models an activity and a student then mimics it. Each year we have a 2-hour training for that. The teachers are required. Only GT, gifted and talented teachers, administer that assessment. Benchmarks is our next assessment, interim assessment for us. These are district developed, so district adopted assessments. It's the only assessment that we have that is administered across all students, that allows us to get a grip on where students are vis-a-vis state standards. Are they meeting the state standards? So these are aligned using backwards design approach. We know that this is what our students are going to be tested on the end of the year. We know that these are the state standards these students are supposed to master in that curriculum. And so we take that and backwards map it, fall, winter, spring. And this year, for the, not this year, in Q2, we, for the first time, rolled out our district-wide new assessment platform, which was really, it's been a long time coming, about 18 months we've worked on this. I have to give David Hanna, our district test coordinator, my hat's off to him for embracing this and everything that our content interventionists have done to roll this out. But what it allowed us to do is administer these assessments in a computer environment. And within days, which used to take a lot longer, we could aggregate our data and know which students weren't mastering what standards, what schools were having more difficulty with what standards, and as a district level, where we stood with standards. So it's just, you know, it was really nice to, you know, to test that out across the district. It wasn't without any hiccups, but overall it went very, very well, and we're getting really good feedback. We can look at item analysis and see, you know, which students didn't do well, and not only can we say, hey, maybe we didn't cover that as well as we needed to, or conversely, maybe that was a bum question. You know, we need to look at this so we can really dig deep in our data, and so we're grateful for that. Typically, in a given year, benchmarks would be administered 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. This year, in our COVID world, we've modified that a little bit. Teachers are responsible for oversight of testing on the day of. Initial training, they participate in lots of training on the assessment platform. And then all teachers and professional learning groups, PLCs, meet to examine their data across the board. Administrators are involved, principals are involved in saying, hey, where are our strengths? Where are our, you know, what gaps do we need to address? As I mentioned, the benchmark assessments are the only ones we have that measure progress on state standards. We did not have state testing last year, as you know, and so we monitor correlations to state testing. That's all we can do, and this is now almost 2 years old because it was last time we could run correlations, but you can see we took matched pairs of students. They had to have the benchmark test, you know, all 3 of the benchmark tests, and they had to have a state assessment result, and we monitored the correlations. We're always careful to say correlation is not causation, but it's relationship between those 2 variables, and all of our correlations on these assessments are in the strong to very strong ranges. The next assessment is SC Ready, one that we're all familiar with. SC Ready is administered to all 3rd through 8th graders once per year. It measures performance against state standards in math and English language arts, as well as a writing component that was added. It's called text-dependent analysis, which is a test of a student's ability to read and comprehend a passage, and then to elicit evidence to support an argument. So critical, you know, reading, and that is done on a rubric. So we, you know, all this data, we dig deep on it. Not only do we look at, you know, how many students, where are they, you know, making progress to mastering that rubric, but we say, who didn't make a score? You know, wasn't even on the board. Why? They didn't write enough. They had an insufficient response. They may have just repeated the question. So we tried to, you know, even look at weird things in the data files. Again, this is required state accountability once per year, and it takes approximately 4.5 hours to assess both reading and math over a 2-day period. South Carolina PASS is the next. There was some changes in this last year. Typically, PASS was assessed in science and social studies. Social studies has been suspended temporarily, at least right now, and 8th grade science was suspended. So it's right now on the books grades 4 through 6, approximately 1.25 hours, required again by state accountability reasons. Teachers not only participate in a 1-hour training, but they also do a simulation with students so that students have some experience in the platform that is required. And they do that every year before the assessment. South Carolina end of course examination program, EOCEP, done annually. It is at the cumulative course in high school for English, language arts, math, science, and social studies. So for the most part, you know, students in 9th grade, freshmen in high school, they take Algebra 1 test. Then in 10th grade, they take the biology test. Then they take U.S. history. So it's not, they don't take all 4 tests in 1 year. It's typically kind of spaced out, 1 per year. Takes about an hour and a half for each assessment, and again, we'll get into that a little bit more depth. Teachers participate in 1 hour of training and proctor the day of the test, And they also do the online simulation with students that takes approximately 30 minutes. Ready to Work is taken by 11th grade students. That is the assessment that allows them to earn a career readiness credential. It also has a soft skills portion on there. It takes approximately about 4 hours, so only juniors take this assessment. And then we do offer seniors the opportunity, if they didn't earn a credential, to try to retake the portions of that test that they may have missed in order to earn that credential. It's a paper-based assessment, and again, that is required by state law. PSAT 8-9 is one that we have elected to offer. That's a district elected assessment. It is part of the SAT suite of products that allows us, when a student is in 8th grade, to say, hey, not only are we going to give you a simulation of what your college entrance exam is going to look like, it also allows us to kind of have a continuum of data, just so that we can see where students' strengths and weaknesses are. So it gives them great opportunity. It is norm referenced, and teachers also participate in 1 hour of training in order to administer that assessment. The PSAT NMSQT. NMSQT stands for National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. It is administered to all students across South Carolina in 10th grade. It is nationally normed and takes approximately 2¼ hours to take that assessment. Again, in the SAT suite of assessments, we have the PSAT 8-9 in 8th grade, PSAT NMSQT in 10th grade, and then students have a choice in 11th grade to take either the ACT or the SAT. So if they elect the SAT, you have a 3-year kind of continuum, not only in preparation for the student, because the College Board sends very detailed results back, and you'll find some of those in your binder, what students can work on to improve. As mentioned, the SAT and ACT, it's choice in South Carolina. The state pays for one assessment, one college entrance exam. So typically we have more students that take the ACT than the SAT. This year we have about 560 that opted for the SAT, and that assessment's coming up actually. It's offered once per year, and they do national norms, and the ACT also has some partial criteria. They have some benchmarks in science, math, and STEM initiatives that allows to see if a student is meeting benchmark. Advanced placement is not taken by every student, but we have many students participating in advanced placement, and those numbers grow each year. Advanced placement courses are offered by the College Board. Students, if they earn a 3 or higher, often depending on the college institution, are able to receive college credit for that. Those are paper and computer-based assessments. They're offered in the spring, and teachers are very active in not only teaching the course, but in helping students prepare for success on those AP exams come May. The Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery is another one that is elective. Many students opt to take it. Several of our schools, encourage everyone to take it. It is an opportunity to meet a career readiness indicator in South Carolina. If you earn a certain qualifying score, it does qualify as a career readiness indicator. You'll have an example again of the score report developed many years ago by the Department of Defense. Access is the language proficiency assessment that is given to all English language learners. So we monitor their progress to meeting English proficiency. So again, not all students take this, but those that are English learners do until they score at such a level that they opt out. This assessment takes approximately 3 hours, and this is administered by the ESOL teachers only, not the traditional classroom teachers. They also participate in 1 hour of training in order to administer that. The Apple assessment was new for us last year. Again, only 11th and 12th graders would possibly take this assessment. It is a test of language proficiency for those students that want to earn the seal of biliteracy on their high school diploma, showing that they are, proficient in languages, in 2 languages. And we had some last year that were proficient in 3 languages, which is really something to celebrate. And we celebrated those students at graduation last year. This assessment is developed by the National Council on Teaching Foreign Languages, ACTFL, and takes approximately 2 hours. They are measured in 3 modes of language skills, and really there's no, other than the teachers identifying students that are eligible. Last year we handled this at the district level. There was no burden on the teacher's part. So some of the questions that were kind of posed a little bit were questions about, how much time does assessment take? How much is this taking up? So if you go to the very last end of your binder, because when I get into the slide, it's going to look small up on here, so I wanted you to have a copy. The last page, I put it in the pocket of your binder. And just so you can know how I approach this a little bit, if you can see this. If we look at our instructional day, we'll just use elementary as an example, which starts at 7:30 a.m. and students are dismissed at 2:30, is a total of 420 minutes. If we deduct lunch, we deduct recess, we deduct the pack up and dismissal, things like that, we get pretty much the minutes we have in our instructional day, and we're required by law to have a certain number of minutes, a minimum of 18 hours. That's including lunch for some and not including lunch for other grade levels. So we exceed those minutes, those minimum minutes at all the elementary, middle, and high school levels. So if I get a total of instructional minutes per week and number of school days, what I did was then take every single assessment by grade level and, where possible, actually use the timestamp. Most of our assessments are timestamped, so we can see when a student starts it and when they begin it. That includes reading inventory, math inventory, all state assessments. Those that are not, time limited, time bound. Some, like the SAT, the ACT, you only have a certain amount of hours to take those tests. So I use the maximum number on those. And on that chart, you'll see that those are by K through 12 are carried across, and they're times by 3, okay? Or by how many times we administer the assessment. For example, benchmark is intended to take a maximum of one class period. So if you are in high school, you have 4 content classes, and you have a 50-minute class period. So that is going to take you 200 minutes in the fall, and in the winter, and in the spring, in a normal non-COVID year. We say that a lot. So that, is 200 times 3, fall, winter, spring, 600 minutes. And if you carry those across and sum them, I took and just did simple math, divided the number of minutes divided by the number of instructional minutes per year to come up with a percentage of time spent on assessments. And you'll see that those vary. No surprises, the 8th grade and 11th grade, we know this, are more tested years. They're lower on the kindergarten and first grade and second grade level, but that 8th grade and 8th grades are highest at 2.1% of our instructional time is taken up by testing. And in the 11th grade, it's 2% of our instructional time. One of the other questions was, do we use this to compare teachers? And I can say who does 99% of the analysis of this type of information, no, we don't use it to compare teachers. On some occasion, we'll say, wow, who's really hitting it out of the park? Because maybe we need them to lead a PLC. Or maybe we need to get some of these people more involved in curriculum teams or things like that, but they're never, ever used to compare teachers. The benchmark data is something that students don't get a grade for that. It's informative. We want them to do well on it because it allows us to get a pulse check. But it does allow us to see where gaps are and curricular weaknesses. So, but other than that, there is none. So I hope that answers the two big, kind of questions. One is how much time, and it may not. You may have additional questions. I want you to take the time to look through the binders, look through the individual score reports, and I encourage you. I would love to meet with you one-on-one to dig as deep as you want, because you can imagine I love talking about this stuff. I think it's important. I think measuring where our students are, and not just on an individual student basis, but also to take that information and put it in a feedback loop and continue to improve our curriculum and instruction. There's nothing more important. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Anyone have a question?
I do. Ms. Owen, wow. I think if you ever decide to get out of education, you got a second career maybe in professional baseball. And,
Moneyball.
no, money, right? So, and I'm not asking for an answer now, but maybe if it's okay with Mr. Lawrence, a call, I'd be interested specifically with AP. I think the only students to take those are students that are obviously in the AP program, correct?
That's correct.
And I know at one time there was a tremendous push, and may I even say pressure, for students to enter that program. So I'd be kind of interested to know two things with that, maybe cost, because I think we pay per test, do we not, for that?
So one of the questions is, and I'm glad you brought that up, thank you, because we didn't address cost. Every single assessment here, with the exception of reading inventory and math inventory, and the PSAT 8-9, is covered by the state. And that includes AP exams.
Okay, there's a misunderstanding, I think.
Oh, no worries.
It's a district cost.
That's correct. And with our Aiken High and those that are pursuing the Cambridge program, they also cover those assessment costs.
Yeah.
So we send them a submission of our assessment result or costs every year, and then that money is reimbursed to us, and we use it to continue the loop.
Yeah. And again, I think AP's a great program, right? But so I'm not casting any doubt on that. But I'd also be interested in maybe the pass rate of that number of students to take it.
Yes.
I know it's a challenging program, and it's intended to be, but.
It is, and you're right, there has been for a long time the power of the two, to give students the opportunity, not just for, those who are on a certain track or college bound, but to give everyone that experience to participate in a rigorous course. But you're right, the more you include, then the more your threes go down. And there's some controversy in the literature on AP programs. You can read the newspapers, I'm sure you do, like I do. But it's a great way to, prepare students for the rigors of college.
Yeah, good program. I think it's great for not all, but some. And I just think at one time I felt like maybe we were overlooking the in-betweeners, right? We were getting rid of some honors programs, and pushing students into AP. But that's a topic maybe for another day or just a discussion. But
And I would be happy to give you our results on that. We do monitor those carefully.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ness.
Sure. Is there somewhere, I know you get reports and things like that going back to the parents, but is there a portal where parents could go see their different assessments for their kids?
If I understand your question correctly, there's two places that you can go, but primarily the source of information about an assessment is the Office of Accountability Assessment website. We try to put detailed parents' resources out there, but if they need detailed test score results, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, just so one thing that came to mind is, especially this year, like do benchmark test scores get sent to all parents?
No.
Okay, and there's no way for parents to see those?
They certainly could. They could schedule an appointment with the teacher one of the things that the Performance Matters platform does, the assessment platform, is it ties in with an analytics platform. So every source of information, every source of data, whether it be a benchmark test, state result, reading inventory, math inventory, anybody can bring in and put a scorecard together. But at the press of a button, they can get a student detail report and print out every single assessment that student has taken and the results. So that student detail report is available at any time at the click of a button.
Where's the button?
It's within the Performance Matters platform, so it'd have to be done by someone internally.
No, it's a question I've just come up with talking to some parents, and I'm not saying that benchmark data is going to give them the answer to their question, but let's say my child's, my student's doing well in, Algebra 1, right? And they're getting an A, but folks are concerned that, they'd love to kind of balance that against if they're hitting the benchmark score or not in that class. You follow me?
So if a student is achieving at the school average, at the average of that class, district
Yeah.
average, things like that, yes, I mean, that data is certainly available, but the parent would have to ask for that, ask the teacher for that.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Kate. That was very good, very informative. And I just want to let the board know that Kate doesn't have a lot of time, but she can carve out a little time if anyone would like to sit down with her and go over some specific details or any additional questions that you might have. She'd be happy to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We might be asking, one question that I have is that I want somebody to tell me where our weaknesses and strengths are this year. And I think that needs to be done in conjunction with spending a bunch of federal money, in terms of mediation, planning remedial programs, and that sort of thing.
We met about that today in instructional services.
Yeah, we'll be-
So we're doing that.
And Mr. Chair, we'll be presenting some results data on March 23rd.
Okay, I think we've got to look at the,
Yeah.
mandatory reading.
Yeah,
That's
so,
great. Good.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I'm sorry, just one, this is a good background, but I look forward to us getting into, what are we doing with it?
What are we doing?
What are we doing with data, just from the perspective of, they did a good job in February, in the previous meeting, talking about KRA scores and FASTR scores and some other things.
Actually, this is the third conversation we've had about that. But the questions keep arising that were outlined on that sheet, that I made notes from emails and from conversations and so forth to give to him. And I was trying to create a definitive answer to a lot of the questions that keep coming up, like, okay, what is this test used for? How much time does it take? What does it cost? Those kinds of things. So what, if nothing else, we now have a catalog, a reference book that will show us what these tests are and so forth. Now, where we go beyond that depends on the questions and comments and so forth that the board has. I'm not trying to, all I'm saying is that my personal interest is I want to make sure that when we do remedial programs, which we need to do, that we're targeting those things to where the need is. That's all. Other people might have other questions which are legitimate, and I would ask that you either ask them or, feed them in to the process in some way. I plan to take this and study it in detail, and even though this is the third presentation, there's a lot of new information in here for me.
We all learn new things every single day.
So I may be coming back with questions later.
Please
But
do.
what I'll probably do, unless I hear these questions from other board members, I'll probably make an appointment to come see you.
Thank you.
Did I get what you're asking, Ken?
I didn't get to a question, but we'll just move on. I think it's great.
Oh, Dr. Hank?
Yes. My question may be similar to what you're asking, Dr. Bradley. This is great
and understanding the individual assessments, this really helps. I think the basics that we're looking for may be coming from Jenny. I'm new enough that I'm not sure, but I want to know the basics such as what percentage of seventh graders flunked English last year? Or where are our numbers? Who are the kids that we're going to be dealing with or really need to reach this summer in preparation for next year? So,
And Ms. Glover can certainly answer that more. I can tell you that I've studied that in detail, and our instructional services team has all that data and are examining it. Failure rates by course compared to last year, where students fell on the benchmarks, et cetera. So, yeah, we've spent a lot of time doing data analysis. We always do, but this year probably more.
I knew it was probably being worked on. Is that what we're going to be discussing on March 23rd?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Can we identify the students take the kindergarten test? Can we identify from those tests that the kids who are likely to fail first grade?
We've not, I've not run those, but yes, through regression, we could certainly do that and look at those, you know, see if it has some predictive ability.
In other words, if we start to try to develop interventions to do things to help prepare kids so that they don't fail, we can know who to start with.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
Next item is a financial report. Mr. Jackson.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Mr. Lawrence, board members. We have our quarterly report for September. As I mentioned a few meetings back, typically after we present our audit, we start with a kind of a wave of financial statements here. This is later than we hoped due to a variety of absences and things in our department, but you should see other months' financial statements coming forward here in the very near future. Nothing out of the ordinary here. It's just standard info. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. We don't have any consent items this evening. We'll go straight to the individual items. First is the personnel appointment. Ms. Hart. Anybody have questions about personnel appointments? If not, entertain a motion.
So moved, accept as recommended.
Have a motion to accept the recommendations.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Reinhardt Jackson. Any discussion? Then all in favor of the motion to approve the recommendation, please raise your hand. That's everyone. The second item is the out-of-district transfer request for 2020-2021. This is a routine item of giving children permission to go to other school districts. Any questions? Is there a motion?
Make a motion
I'll
to
move by
accept that.
Ms. Shealy.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. The third item is the same request, but for the 2021-2022 school year. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Second by Ms. Reinhardt Jackson. Any discussion? All in favor to approve the motion to give permission to these children to go out of the district? Raise your hand. That's everyone. Number four is the revision of policy BCB, board members' conflict of interest. This is the second reading. Is there a motion to approve the policy
So moved.
changes as recommended? Moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by
Second.
Dr. Haynes. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving changes? That's everyone. Fifth is the revision of policy JICJ, J, paging devices, cell phones, and other personal electronic devices, second reading. What this is just that simply adding smart watches to the list of things that we have to have regulated in the schools. Is there a motion? Moved by Ms. Healy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Silas. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's everyone. Now for the fun one. Proposed calendar for 2021, 2022. Dr. Murphy?
The fun one. Hope to live up to that. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, distinguished board members, and Mr. Lawrence. I'm going to bring you a brief overview of our 2021-2022 academic calendar for your consideration and approval. So every year, for the policy ICA, we must bring the calendar to the board no later than the spring of the year. The state of South Carolina says that each calendar must have 190 days annually to consist of a minimum of 180 days of instructional time, covering at least 9 calendar months. There are some other parameters that we must consider in preparing a calendar, such as it cannot start before the 3rd Monday in August, and you have to have 3 weather makeup days. Our local policy also says classes can begin no later than the 4th Monday in August and must include 5 in-service days and 5 teacher work days. Our process for developing this year's calendar began with a review of the current legislation and any updates that came from the State Department of Education concerning school calendar years. Next, we met as a senior staff to discuss any feedback from the current calendar and important events that should be considered, such as graduation and parent conferences. We considered the calendars through the lens of schools at each level, from high school to middle school, down to elementary school, and then we sent 2 drafts out for input at all 3 levels. The first level we considered was the executive directors, the second was the principals, and the third and final was with principals, schools, and their faculties and staff. We recommended a calendar to the superintendent. Tonight I bring that calendar for your consideration. And you're not going to be able to see that calendar, but I'm sure you have one at your areas there. I will briefly talk about, this is option 1 that was recommended. Option 2 featured a weather makeup day in October to break up the stretch between Labor Day and Thanksgiving. This change, however, did cause the first semester to end later and a need to realign parent conferences and professional developments. The option 2 gathered 32% of the preferences, but option 1 had 63%, and the remaining schools did not offer a preference.
Okay, we need a motion so we can discuss. Is there a motion
I move
to
accept it as it is.
option 1?
Option 1, yes.
Mr. Smith moves to accept the recommended option 1 calendar. Is there a second? That's right, Jack. And now let's discuss it. Anybody have remarks or comments?
I just have one quick question.
Let's
Would it, Dr. Murphy, would it be correct to assume that our move to 1-to-1 gives us some greater flexibility with regard to weather makeup days and our response to those opportunities?
Potentially it does. We can have e-learning days as well. So, and unfortunately, sometimes with the weather makeup days also come power outages. And so we have to take a look at all that stuff before we consider just saying, hey, this is going to be a learning day from home. Got to make sure all our kids have access to electricity and then also wireless.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, we have a motion and a second. The motion is to approve option 1, the recommended calendar for option 1. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's everybody. Boy, that was easy.
Thank you.
Option 7 is the ESSER 2 funding for summer 2021. Mr. Gold and Mr. Drexler, do y'all want to say anything?
Yeah, I am going to ask Mr. Drexler and Ms. Glover to just share some of the options and the plans that are in the works to start achieving some of that catch-up growth that we're going to need for our students who have missed so much in the past year.
Right, so we have been working as an instructional services division, in conjunction with some of our school leaders, teachers, literacy coaches, on the plans for not only summer school, but also, after school and Saturday school right now. So, we have currently budgeted about $350,000 for schools to immediately begin addressing needs for after school and Saturday school, targeting students who have, at a secondary level, failed one course or more, and at the semester and at elementary level as well, failures, as well as students who are just behind, possibly in the bottom 20th percentile in reading and math, based on the data that we have, RI, MI, and FastBridge. So, of course, we didn't necessarily limit it to just that criteria. If a teacher sees that a child needs the after-school or Saturday school services, they could certainly recommend that child. And schools really have been working on those plans, submitting those plans, and we've been approving those in our office and setting up those budgets for schools to begin serving students. We're also planning on summer. And of course, we've done summer programs for all levels before, but this will be at a magnitude we're not quite used to, but we're getting there, and we'll have a full plan to submit to you in the coming month. We plan to do summer at all of our sites, with the exception of those that will have summer maintenance, and those students would be able to go to other sites where programs are being held. Students will be targeted based on the most up-to-date information we have at the time. So third quarter will pull at a secondary level those failures. At the elementary level, we'll use, of course, those students who have failed courses, but we'll also use RI, MI, and FastBridge data. That data gives us, drilled down to those skills and standards that we need to make sure that we address. And so when we have that data, we'll be able to more refine our curriculum and the programs that we'll be using for each individual student. But we're waiting for the third quarter data so we can make sure we have a finalized list of the students that will receive the summer invitation. So based on our current data for elementary alone from the semester averages, we have about 20% of our students who would qualify. At middle level, we have 11%, almost 12%, and the high, we have, I don't have the percentage here, I think it was about 13% of our high school students who failed at least one course. So we do have that data. Ms. Olin did a great job sharing that with our principals last week so that they would have the information on failures across the district, and they have that information, of course, for their school levels, where they have lists of names of students that they can target. And so we've been trying to be proactive with offering content recovery right now, so that when we get to summer, we'll have fewer students who potentially need that service. We have realized, however, that it's difficult to attract teachers to work in our summer programs. We've had issues in the past with third grade retention and summer reading camp at the elementary level. We sometimes have a hard time attracting high-quality teachers. And so based upon that information, this board agenda item is asking for us to be able to go ahead and begin advertising at a new rate, $37 per hour for teachers and $40 an hour for programs funded through ESSER $2, to make sure that we get the number of teachers we need, because at the elementary level alone, we need almost 150 teachers to teach the number of students we're going to have. So this pay is comparable to the hourly rate of an individual between years 21 and 22 with a bachelor's degree, year 18 with a bachelor's plus 18, years 12 to 13 with a master's degree, and years 8 to 9 with a master's plus 30, years 4 to 5 with a doctorate, so that we can entice our teachers who may not normally work summer to join us and work in our summer program. So any questions about that or anything, Mr. Troxler, you'd like to add?
Explain, you said 37 and 40, I missed something on that.
So our current salary schedule is $30 an hour for extra duty pay.
Right.
So in discussions, in senior staff and with our leadership team and instructional services division, we're trying to find, an amount that would be attractive to veteran teachers as well as our first-year teachers. Typically, we have, many first-year teachers and the younger teachers who like to work during summer. It's harder to find veteran teachers to work. $30 an hour is not as attractive to them because many of them, their hourly rate is more than that. So we were trying to find a sweet spot to attract teachers, and our salary schedule has had $30 an hour for quite some time. So,
One other, how many hours a day is this?
so it would be a full day. So 7 hours for or 6.5 hours for students, 7.5 hours for teachers. So that's the current program we have that we're writing right now.
Thank you.
I have several questions.
Okay.
First of all, talk to me about transportation and lunch now that this is gonna be a full day.
Yes, ma'am. So I actually have the bullets here, I just didn't get to them. So
Okay.
we are going to provide transportation, and we'll participate in the summer seamless feeding program to make sure the students have breakfast and lunch.
Okay, and, what about bus drivers? Will bus drivers be, also receiving some kind of incentive, to drive during the summer? Since it's the-
So we do increase the pay, so we do $15 an hour for our summer programs for bus drivers. So that was what we planned on offering for our bus drivers. We've never had a problem getting bus drivers for our summer programs, and typically those bus drivers also work as aides in the classrooms. We do have some where we don't have, they may just drive, but some of them drive and stay to assist in a classroom. Say a special ed paraprofessional might be needed, or classroom support.
My concern is I just would like for them to be able to receive, comparable rate as well, during the summer. That's one of my concerns. And is this gonna be math and English only, or is this gonna be other?
So at the elementary level, our primary focus is math and ELA. We'll certainly embed science and social studies content, but our primary focus at the elementary level is ELA and math, or ELA and math. At the secondary level, it's based primarily on content and credit recovery. So it's going to be specifically based upon the courses that child was not successful in.
Anybody else? All right, do we have a motion to approve the request for the salary adjustment? Oh, I'm sorry, Trey, did you have something?
No, no, sir, I'm glad that Ms. Glover covered it all. As a reminder, just a quick note, these are ESSER II funds, new federal funds that are available to us. $28.2 million that's available to us to spend by September 30 of 23. So again, as Ms. Glover and as Mr. Lawrence has mentioned before, we'll be bringing a plan forward here in the coming weeks for that entire pot.
Before we vote, because this is just pertaining to teachers, correct? Just to get a comparable rate for them. Am I understanding that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we've used, teachers and leads is the recommendation here. Historically, we've used $15 an hour for bus drivers, for classroom aides, and that's what we're recommending in this spot as well. Sticking with that, but it's not part of this recommendation because there's no change.
Okay, I guess my concern is, will we hear a recommendation for a change for bus drivers? Or is it something that we can discuss at a later date?
And we can certainly discuss it. The primary reason for requesting this change is that we are having difficulty recruiting teachers to participate. And particularly when we're looking at veteran teachers who want to, during the school year, have a higher hourly rate than what we typically offer in the summer.
So I would just like, again, like for us to, a later meeting to discuss that, that being an agenda item about, discussing the bus drivers.
I think at some point, we're gonna get a recommend, the administration will bring to us an outline of the summer program, of what programs that they are proposing if we offer, and the staffing and the whole 9 yards. At that point, it might be monies attached, I think that needs to fund certain things that need to be discussed. So my suggestion would be, let's just have it all done at one time. Let's go ahead and decide whether we're gonna adjust the teacher pay, and then wait for them to come back with an overview of the whole summer remedial program, and anything that, is needed to support it, and whatever. That's best announcement.
Just one last question. So, some high-level numbers that I wanted to ask you is, how many teachers did we have to recruit for last summer program last year? And how many do we need to recruit for this year? And it sounds like you're already recruiting, so how many of those have you filled?
We haven't, we wanted to post
Okay.
immediately, so as soon
Gotcha.
as you approve,
So
we'll be posting tomorrow.
Yeah, and I guess my question gets to with us allowing folks to cover up to 3 classes instead of 2 in the summer. Is our target for the number of teachers we have to recruit higher than it was last year?
Oh, definitely.
In estimates?
So at the elementary level, I could probably tell you, but not at the secondary level. So typically, our secondary courses are delivered virtually, and we're gonna try to do more, face-to-face. When you have face-to-face, of course, you have to have the bodies in the room. We had 90 elementary teachers last year, and we need
153.
this year, 153.
So thank you for that. That's the point. So I'm not saying anybody was gonna vote against this, but that's just kind of what my mind.
Right.
You probably barely filled those positions last year, if I had to
That's
guess,
correct.
and now you need 50% more.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to deal with the recommendation from the administration?
I move that we accept it the way it's presented.
Okay, is there a second? Ms. Shealy? Have a motion to approve the salary adjustment recommended by the administration for summer school teachers.
This is, let me clarify.
All right.
if I may.
Point of clarification.
This is just possibly for 1 year. This isn't an ongoing thing. We're looking at it for, as long as these funds are there, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I would look at it for 3 years. It's gonna take 3 years to get this done, I believe.
Let's just get that in there.
And the funding's for 3 years.
Yes, sir.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the salary recommendation by the administration. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's everyone. The next item is the Head Start regulations and policies that you have in your package. The federal government requires that we have certain councils, groups of advisors and so forth set up to operate the Head Start program, and also policies and procedures for the identification of children and a lot of other things. And that's what's in this package. It needs to be adopted by the Board of Education in order for us to be able to operate the Head Start program. Or some set of policies and regulations have to be adopted. So that's what you've been presented with. Is there a motion that we approve the policies and procedures and so forth that have been recommended by the administration?
I make a motion that we approve the Head Start policy.
And is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes. All right, the last item, individual item is a request for donation of surplus weight equipment from North Augusta High. Dr. Murphy, while he's coming up, I'll say that my understanding of what this is all about, maybe this is what you're going to talk about, Dr. Murphy. I was just going to explain why we have surplus equipment. not appropriate, my first question was, why don't we just pass it on to one of our other schools? The answer to that is it's not appropriate for younger students. It has to be used in high schools, and everybody's in pretty good shape there. That's all I was gonna say.
No, you said it perfectly, sir. I was gonna reiterate the fact that those weights were actually branded with North Augusta's mascot, so it wouldn't be appropriate for another high school, and they were of larger sizes, so it's not appropriate for the middle school level. Mr. Murphy had received a request for a donation from the North Augusta Public Safety, and we also are sending some to Aiken County Sheriff's Department as well. Now, the middle schools have also gone over into that facility, and they've targeted and marked some items for dispersal there, and there are a couple other items from IT that we're gonna redistribute, but most of that stuff is at the end of its useful utility, and that facility is slated to be demolished.
Is there a motion to donate the weight equipment as recommended by the administration?
I make a motion that we donate that to.
Moved by Ms. Reinhardt Jackson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Haynes. Any further discussion? All in favor of donating the excess weight equipment to the Sheriff's Department in North Augusta Public Safety, please raise your hand. I think that's everyone. Thank you. I received no request from individual board members to,
I have one little bit that just come up that I would really like to share. Many of my colleagues up here, you know about my little school down in Gloverville. Gloverville Elementary has 330 kids roughly. And over the past few years, since 1971, they've been hosting a Valentine court there, in the school, in the community, all these years. Past few years, they've raised a lot of money. Been hitting consistently over $30,000. This year, they've raised $31,000 in a COVID year. In a COVID year. Now, these families, we're not talking about 320-something kids. We're talking about probably around 30 kids in the Valentine court itself. And those families, assisted by other families, make this money. And there's all kind of fundraising going on starting in November, October, all the way through Valentine court. So that was a huge, huge coup Monday night for Gloverville Elementary. And I just want to raise the notion of it. Thank those parents for all their hard work and the kids. And, you know, when you start putting little kids on a stage, they start getting real nervous. And the pleasure of that, other than being able to utilize the money in the school for the kids, is watching the kids up there on that stage. That is precious. Thank you.
okay. Superintendent's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I want to again repeat the condolences that the chair shared at the beginning, and my heart goes out to the Lindsay family and the Dawkins family and the Hillary family tonight. Yesterday, we announced that we're moving to a traditional school schedule on Monday, March 1st. So I just wanted to kind of give you a rundown of my thinking, not a lot of detail, because I did listen to a lot of people, got a lot of differing views, and read a lot of reports and a lot of articles, and combed through a lot of websites and everything else. But, you know, some of the highlights, particularly with local data, our instances per 100,000 in population are coming down. Our percent positive is coming down. We've got a low trend rate. Our cases per week in Aiken County have been cut in half. And again, like I said, looking at university studies that are recommending schools go back to school, and many examples of successful implementation right here in South Carolina, and just the belief that our students are going to be more successful if they're able to be in the classroom with their teachers more than a couple or a few days a week. Now, this is going to create some impact for us and for our students, for our schools. As we've said, multiple times, and there was one, I don't want to call out Mr. Nessel, But there was one night that I'm not sure it was completely clear that we had said that if we go to school 5 days a week, we're not gonna be able to maintain the 6 feet. And he made sure he asked that question. And I think that's important to note, because that is an issue, and that is something that our teachers bring up regularly and the parents bring up regularly. So at full capacity, we can't maintain the 6 feet in most cases. Some cases we can. But our operations staff continues to work very hard in ensuring that we have the clear barriers in place, and we're still working on that this week. Any teacher will tell you that these barriers are not ideal. They're not the best things in the world, but while they're not ideal, according to DHEC, they do allow us to reduce the distance requirement to 3 feet as long as masks are being worn consistently in conjunction with those. And not just consistently, but correct. So correct mask wearing, consistent mask wearing, use of the barriers, distancing whenever is possible. Those things are going to help to mitigate that concern for us. Bus transportation is a concern because we're still limited by the state to 67% capacity in our school buses. That's going to mean some double routing. That's going to mean some late arrivals. Principals are working with their staffs to address any lost instructional time in the mornings. If once we get into the traditional schedule and we discover that too many students are arriving late for the schools to compensate that time, then we'll certainly look at the possibility of addressing start times and making some other adjustments. Quarantine is another thing that is likely going to be impacted. I think that we can anticipate that more students will be quarantined based on a positive case than would be the case in the hybrid model. So we'll have a higher number there. Something else that we'll need to do is adhere to the 14-day quarantine. And in most cases, we've had to adhere to the 14-day quarantine anyway. And that's because the rules for the 10-day quarantine still require that when you come back into the school environment or come back into the work environment, you have to maintain the 6 feet. And they say nothing about using the plexiglass barriers. You have to maintain 6 feet, and you have to wear a mask constantly throughout the day. And so we don't see where in most cases we would be able to accomplish that for the last 4 days of that quarantine period. So I think we're going to be looking at that. So we just can't assure the conditions that are required for that. But a lot of quarantines really are based on us making sure that we're careful. I mean, and generally speaking, a student who is positive and has consistently worn a mask, the classroom has consistently used the barriers, very few students would be quarantined based on that positive case. So it really is going to take some attention to detail to ensure that when we do have positive cases, that we have tracked where students have been, who students have been in contact with, and address it that way. Also, as we've mentioned a number of times, we will be making school-by-school decisions. We're going to continue to monitor student cases as well as employee cases and quarantines, just to reinforce what that plan is. 3% positive in the student population could result in moving the school to the next more strict instructional model. So in this case, going from a 5-day model to a hybrid model. If 25% of our staff is isolated or quarantined, that could result in a move to remote learning for a period of at least 1 week. We can't operate safely and efficiently if we lose a large portion of our staff. A lot of discussion about masks. We continue to ask our state leaders to prioritize teachers and school staff in vaccine distribution. And I saw today that DHEC has developed some recommendations, a kind of a toolkit to help school districts and vaccine providers to process that. And you know, not suggesting that seniors get bumped or anything like that, but school staff should, I think, exclusively receive the next priority as vaccine distribution goes. And just some universal reminders. We just all need to remember these things. We ask our parents and the community to help us to be successful in the move to the traditional schedule. It's something that requires the community and homes and the school. Parents, we're certainly asking that you check in with their children before they leave home. Review all of the COVID-related symptoms, and if any are present, keep children at home. And this process is not just for getting up Monday through Friday and going to school. I think that any time our children or anybody else in our household leaves home, we need to check for symptoms and stay home if anything is present. Another one for school and everywhere else is remind our students to keep their masks on, wear those masks properly, to wash hands as often as they have the opportunity to wash hands, and when that's not available, use hand sanitizer, not touching the face, not touching anything. It's interesting, I thought that I was the only person who walked around with my hands in my pockets or my hands clasped behind my back, but I was paying attention to people in the grocery store the other day, and whenever they weren't taking something off the shelf, most people had hands in pockets or hands behind their back. So, and again, the physical distancing to the extent possible. Following our procedures at school and in the community is going to help to stop the spread of COVID and allow all of our schools to remain on traditional schedule. I mean, my goal is for us to stay on our 5-day traditional schedule until the second week of June. And we can do that if we focus on all those mitigating strategies. Last thing I wanted to mention was cleaning. That's another area that could be somewhat impacted. Our custodial staff focuses very heavily on cleaning and disinfecting throughout the week. Fridays up until now have been used for kind of catch-up work, catching up on things that they weren't able to accomplish during the week, like, not being able to mop as often or not being able to dust as often. Those are things that have gotten done on Fridays. So catching up is going to be a little bit more difficult, but our primary focus has to remain unchanged. The cleaning and disinfecting for the purpose of disease prevention, that's going to continue to be our priority. So I think if we all pull together, we follow these procedures and strategies, not only in the schools, but in the communities and in our homes, I think we're going to have a successful 13 and a half weeks of school coming up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I would mention, going back to the COVID situation, I'm already starting to get questions about, are we going to rescind our decision about group functions? In other words, if we were able to go back to school 5 days a week, why can't we have a prom? And that's out there. So I don't mean to put you on the spot tonight, but that's something that needs to be thought about. See if there's any, if we, we're going to hold firm on make exceptions to what we decided about.
Yeah, and there are a number of things with that, like we're still under the governor's 250 person rule in a venue. We did not disallow or cancel any proms. The high school principals and other leadership in the schools got together and determined that was the best course of action for them to take. I mean, there's a big difference between a 4 or 5 hour dance in an enclosed space than a classroom where we can control where students sit and we have plexiglass barriers and those kinds of things. So those are kind of different things, but certainly I know the principals are talking to their PTOs and their teacher leadership and other community members about some options for having some kind of formal recognition like that. But what that will look like, I don't know. But they are continuing to talk about that. I've heard from at least 2 or 3 schools that are actively seeking some kind of event for their seniors.
I have a question. Full of questions tonight. My first question is, have we allocated a portion of the COVID funds to cover the rise, in the cost of items needed, pertaining to PPE? Since we're going back to 5 days, just to assure that we have those items if needed.
Yes, we still have, ESSER one funds that are allocated to PPE and to some other things, and we'll continue to do that. But whatever the schools need to provide for cleaning, disinfecting, for helping to manage crowds, for helping with air handling and the, recirculation of air and all of those things. Yes, ma'am, all of that is part of it.
And my last question is, you were speaking about the janitors and the cleaning. Janitors, were somewhat overwhelmed, with cleaning that needed to be done, to make sure that everybody stays safe. What kind of support or help are we providing to them now that everybody's back in the building 5 days a week?
Well, I think we've had some experience with that with elementary schools since they've been at full capacity. I talked to Dr. Yarborough this morning about a couple of things, and he feels confident in his staff. But obviously, if we start seeing some areas where we're getting overwhelmed, we're gonna look at pulling in more support.
All right,
Question. This is minor, but it came from a teacher of concern. Do we know about teachers having to be on bathroom monitoring? Because they're only allowing so many students in the bathroom at a time. How is that gonna change when we bring all these students back? And is that a great resource of teacher usage?
So, I don't know. I actually have been in schools and seen adults monitoring the entrance to the bathrooms. Those are, that's part of a school level plan for how to manage access and how to maintain distancing of students. But that's certainly something we can discuss, and we'll get the executive directors and principals together and see what their plans are for that.
May I add a little history? The reason for that is we've had, prior to someone getting on the board, we had a lot of instances of people going into bathrooms, doing things they should not have been doing, and we could not trace it back. That's why we're having to use some teachers in some places just to monitor who's going into bathrooms and so forth. We had a large number of school disruptions, let's say that.
well, we do need to have a, executive session. I need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of considering the following matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we're back in regular session. While in executive session, we received some legal advice on policy BCB, and I don't think it requires any action, any vote. So, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your hand. Stand adjourned.
I think,